I'm just gonna monologue, son. I'm gonna monologue, right? Holy shit.
Changing beneath the silent waters lies an endless abyss. Stay here and listen. In this endless revel of the abyss, your cries rise.
Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and this is gonna be our final thoughts for Hysilens after the before you pull the every single team comp. By the time those two videos are gonna be going up, frankly speaking, for Hysilens, this before, not very before, but like the actual performances and what I think of an Honkai kind of stuff is gonna be a little bit more straightforward compared to our previous final thoughts. For example, like your final on your DPS, your cast rates, your T, your highs, and everything, because generally, at the end of the day, Hysilens, the main role for bro, is just extremely similar to Jiaoqiu, except that Jiaoqiu's main role was like for the debuffer to Akron, and then Hysilens' main role was to amplify your damage for a DOT. Also, excuse my voice. It's really, really bad, right? Please, W's in the chat, W's in the comments for taking care of my your streamer, right? But in any case, yeah. Are you running low on your fake collaboration funds? Well, worry not, because LD Shop is here. Developed by LD Player Emulator, a formal game top-up platform, LD Shop offers HSR top-ups up to 33%. All you need is your server and game ID and you're all set. It's safe, reliable, and almost instant, as you can see from this process over here. Simply take a look at the prices of items in-game and LD Shop like Express Pass and 80/80 on-rate shots. Currently, there is a further 5% discount available one day before the update, and users registered using my link will also receive a 50% and 5% off coupon, which can save you a maximum of $50. The first top-up bonuses can be activated at LD Shop, and spending over 80 USD will gain you VIP, which rewards you a free supply pass. Check out the link in the description to top up now. You could try to use her outside of DOT. I think we did a couple of tests with like, I don't know, super break Hysilens. We tried to run her with like Akron, all that kind of stuff. I think for Akron, at least for Akron, you kind of want to make sure your Akron is around E2. Otherwise, I'm not gonna be too convinced that the amount of debuffs that she's gonna be able to apply would outweigh the damage amplification that you could have otherwise gotten from your Silver Wolf and your Cypher or even your Jiaoqiu, right? So unless you really have a E2 Akron, then I really wouldn't go that route. But specific to Hysilens' performance as a DOT, I think namely from like every single previous team that we just tested out yesterday, between Black Swan, Runmei, Tribby, Robin, alright, even the 4-star DOT, right? The disparity was the biggest between the lack of Black Swan and Robin. Because both Black Swan and Robin basically got a 0 cycle. And if you were to take away all of the relatable things, right? If you take away all the relatable things, right? So for example, if you're going to be full on E0, even taking that away, I'm not too sure if you would need to worry about it that much if you're going to be a DOT main and you put for Hysilens and you already have Kafka but you do not have Black Swan, because I think Robin is going to be completely serviceable over here. And the main reason is just because even though, and I said it previously just now as well, your Robin can find a spot outside from just being used in DOT. But that is not really going to be the case that much on Black Swan. Like anyone that says that Black Swan, you can use her as a debuffer, right? You run Black Swan as a debuffer, 20% defense down, and the Epiphany giving you a little bit more of the damage reduction vulnerability is really, really cool, especially in this environment with a lot of options for different debuffers, like your Jiaoqiu, like your Cypher, like your Sylph, and all that kind of stuff, right? So unless you are absolutely certain you're going to be sticking with the DOT archetype, the differences is honestly not going to be that worth it. Like, I would not go out of my way just to get Black Swan for Hysilens and Kafka. Kafka, on the other hand, it is pretty much non-negotiable. I stand firmly with the fact, as you guys could have probably seen yesterday, where we kind of use Luca, right? Because Luca can proc physical bleed as the alternative to Kafka. And oh my god, it was not it. Alright, it was definitely not it. You really want Kafka to be going alongside Hysilens because the DOT trigger from Kafka is just way too frequent. You have 2 from follow-up attack, 1 from ultimate, perfect utilization of your tutorial Lycone, and you can just go on so goddamn fast with the AoE, which I think DOT nowadays having AoE is also quite useful, and Luca is literally just single target damage. Not having Kafka with Hysilens is just I wouldn't do it. Which means that if you really wanted to pick up Hysilens and use her effectively in DOT, Kafka is pretty much going to be non-negotiable. It is what it is, right? And then if you do not have Kafka, you kind of want to just ask yourself, do you even want to play DOT in the first place? Running the cost required to pull for 2 units instead of, let's just say, for example, you pull for a final, use as alternatives like this force, like Team Win, RMC, and everything else. But the thing is, you can't really make use of the same thing for Hysilens, right? You can't really use like a Luca to replace Kafka. You can't really use RMC, you can't really use HMC. So it really just depends on if you have Kafka for that slot to make use of DOT. It is more so, I would say that Hysilens' entire introduction for this particular patch is for the DOT mains that have been neglected for the past more than 1 year to finally get an update for their power level to balance it with version 3, which I feel like it has really been like what they have been doing for the entire version, which is to play catch up, right? It is to play catch up for all of your different team comps to try to make sure that each of these teams with their respective vertical investments, so i.e. their best slot, is not too far from one another, right? Cypher bring up the investments for Acheron, a little bit more for Phasea as well. Then Casual is going to be able to get Hyacin, and then your D-Herda got an Nexa, but all this, and you can just use an Nexa without D-Herda. And now Final is probably going to be getting Ceridra, and I'm going to see if Ceridra is going to bring Final to the next level. So they're trying to make everything not too crazy, and at the same time, because we are getting so many of these like vertical investments for the brand new team comps, if they were to forsake the old archetypes completely, it will feel really bad. That's when like power creep, oh my god, unplayable, all that kind of stuff. So like you see the rework for Qingliu, the rework for Blade, Silverwolf, the rework for Kafka, and now they introduce Hysilens to make the old, because DOT is a very old team comp ever since version 1, to make a old team comp once again able to compete with version 3. But because of this logic, right, the way that they are pathing out, how do you make DOT great again, right? So DOT as a whole, it just depends on how often are you going to be able to get like this kind of Hysilens treatment. So what I'm guessing is going to happen that if you want to commit into DOT, you pull for Hysilens, you pull for Kafka, or you already had Kafka, and you're like, okay, yeah, I like to play DOT, right? You go in, you just everything. Going into version 4, it's really up to Dawi to decide if DOT is going to be playing catch up again, or if they're going to make it a focus. And if I'm going to be a betting man, I would never bet on the fact that DOT will be the focus of version 4, because every single new version, they tend to introduce a brand new mechanic that is like out of the box, right? So 2 was super break, 3 is HP scaling and remembrance, then 4, maybe we see defense scaling DPS or like something like I can't think of, right? Or no, I'm so distracted by the okay, yeah, but that's pretty much. So I think DOT is just gonna always serve as like a alternative, right? An alternative to the original mainstay comp for that version. And whenever the alternative is gonna be brought up as a comparison, they are probably gonna introduce 1 at most 2 different units to make the alternative catch up again. So in the future, right now we have Hysilens, we have Kafka. We probably would need like a DOT sustain or a even better slot tree than Black Swan as well as Robin, because I don't really foresee a situation where Kafka is getting replaced just because she is like the glue for the DOT society. So most likely that specific slot tree has the highest probability of getting changed out in version 4 if they are still going to be sticking to DOT. So for all those reasons, I think Robin is going to be way more than enough, especially if you do want to play DOT. You don't really need to think about Black Swan that much. However, if you're thinking about like the absolute highest performance from like vertical investment wise, E1 Black Swan is pretty badongadongs, right? E1 Black Swan is pretty badongadongs. In fact, E1 Hysilens is also very badongadongs, so is E1 Kafka. So which is why I feel like these kind of alternative team comps, because they are like not getting a lot of updates, right? You're not getting a lot of love from the entire version itself. Like it's not gonna be like Super Break, it's not gonna be Remembrance. They made their strength lie in their early idolence. So even if they don't give DOT as frequent of a update in terms of roster, you can still vertical invest in the DOT in order to catch up their strength. So for now, let's just say your entire team for Kafka and Black Swan back in those days, right? It was a start of Ezio Ezreal, right? But if you're a DOT main and you still want to play DOT and they don't release any brand new DOT units, you're either left with the choice of pulling for vertical events or DOT to make them catch up, or you just completely jump into the new comp. So that is going to be depending on the player itself. What do you want to prefer playing in HSR? Because there are just so many different teams, and until the 3-team content happens, we just don't have enough jobs, right? We don't have enough jobs to fill up all of these applicants for the endgame content in HSR, right? So that's pretty much my thoughts on Hysilens with regards to like Black Swan, Barbarian, and the performance and DOT as a whole. For the actual unit itself, I would say that if you take a look into the build, right, you really want your Kafka to be slower than Hysilens, as well as Black Swan, because you kind of want to make them stack on the debuffs first before Kafka goes ahead and trigger everything, right? So for Hysilens, you're going to cast your skill 1, so the rotation is going to be skill basic. She's pretty skill point, very skill point positive actually, especially if you're going to be running Ho with the energy regeneration. Then afterwards, Kafka is going to be the one triggering the DOTs after the DOT and the debuffs is going to be applied to the enemy team. I would also say that for Hysilens, her trace and her relics is not as stringent. Maybe in the inner 2-piece, if you're unable to get a 2-piece Revelry because you do not want to farm from Phynon, right? Because nobody really uses Arcadia, running Glamoth hasn't really been that bad of an experience for myself personally, right? So it's not going to be the end of the world. 4-piece DOT is still pretty much non-negotiable, and if you want to consider vertical investment, this is pretty phenomenal. You can check out the $1 versus $10,000 Hysilens video where we show the differences between the E0 and the E1, so take a look at that. And then for the Signature Lycon, if you do not have the S1, Black Swan is fine. I guess if you really wanted, you could try running Kafka. But if you do not have these two, then I think not resolution, but like damage scaling Nihility Lycons, right? So this is damage scaling, right? And ideally Eyes of Prey, because Eyes of Prey does give you EHR, which is going to be very important for rotate 120% to get a 90% damage buff, right? So that is pretty much the build, the Lycons, all that kind of stuff. In the future, right? In the future, what is happening after Hysilens is gonna be Servidra, right? I'm about to play the 3.5 story. So one thing that I like to say a lot, which is I feel like HSR, they slowly, or rather not slowly, they try to tie a little bit for a unit's meta in the story itself. So I'm gonna be playing this and we'll see how Servidra is gonna be cooking. And like I mentioned in my previous videos, I don't believe that Servidra is only going to be released with Phynon in mind, right? I think that Servidra, once she comes out, she's probably going to be able to work with other units after her release. So whether it gonna be Evernight, whether it's gonna be the brand new Dunhing, or like even like Cyrene, or like even in version 4, right? Even version 4, all those could be a possibility because that is something that happened to Sunday as well, right? Sunday was a support that was introduced. Initially, it was like, oh my god, he changes everything for Jingyuan, right? Sunday was the best in store for Jingyuan, and he pretty much made every single one of your older crit DPS version 1 and version 2s a lot stronger because of 20% crit energy regeneration. So that was version 2, buffing up your older version 2 and version 1 units. So Servidra may have a similar treatment where right now she is buffing the older generations, but in the future, brand new units are gonna be introduced. There is a good potential that Servidra might work with them as well. And at the end of the day, you're playing Honkai support realm, so I always have a little bit more of a bias for supports, generally speaking, when it comes to team building, especially if you're somebody that can't really decide on where exactly do you want to use it, right? Hysilens is not going to be in this case because I think Hysilens' entire role is a very set in stone, right? It's very clear, it's very obvious. Her role is pretty much making DOT great again. So if you're someone that has no interest in playing DOT, I don't really think anybody should be considering her inclusion for a team, because for Strategy to Strategy, you could either be getting vertical events, for example, like Teep, right? Teep right now, you're going to be using it in a lot of different cases. You could even get it for example for Sunday. You can even get a couple of like even vertical investments, like for example E2 Phynon, E2 Casuals. At least those things, you don't have to force yourself playing Hysilens if you don't like DOT, right? And the same can be said for the flip side, which is if you really like DOT and you really had Kafka, it's like, would you pull Sunday for a Jingyuan? I think the answer is pretty obvious. So you're probably going to be committing for Hysilens vertical upgrade for your DOT team because you like playing DOT team, right? And at the end of the day, there really isn't a wrong or right answer. It just depends on what do you want to use in HSR. But at the end of everything, there's one final thing I want to just touch on before I wrap up this video, which is DOT. The mechanics, the 机制, right? The 机制 for DOT. Until we get a content that can really make DOT feel like the mainstay team comp, right? The one that is undisputable gonna be the best in slot. It is gonna be a little bit rough because DOT will always suffer from the mechanics of the debuffs going away, the DOT going away, and not getting those DOT applied cross waves, right? Because of all these things, all three endgame content that we have right now, they are not exactly always gonna be best in stuff for DOT unless the DOT gets an artificial buff, which is right now we're gonna be seeing artificial Artificial Buff in Memory of Chaos, Artificial Buff in Pure Vision, and Artificial Buff in Abel Shadows. All three, they have the Artificial DOT buff on the DOT banner. Surprise, surprise, right? And then after Lygus comes out as the MOC boss, he is also gonna be another brand new MOC boss that will not remove the debuffs as well as DOT, even though you're gonna be changing his face between the 5 health bars, right? So until those things happen, they are like almost like band-aids to the underlying issue of DOT, which is the design that HSR has introduced for almost like 90% of the content. It is not really that good for debuffers and DOT as a whole, because you need to keep reapplying, right? Unless they come up with another content, it could be the 3-team final endgame boss, where your DOT will not suffer the similar issues as you are going to be facing for the current 3 endgame. So the final boss after you clear the first 3 teams is just going to be a massive, like a raid boss, like a giant raid with 10 bars of HP. No removal of any debuffs. You just keep going and going and going and going. That could make DOT really, really fucking strong, right? Perma 50 stacks Arcana, perma debuffs, perma takes on the thing. And if that boss is not able to cleanse itself, I think DOT is going to shine very, very hard in that department, right? At least a little bit more competitive without being too worried about your external one-off shield factors, like your MOC buff, Pure Vision buffs, as well as Abel Shadow buffs, right? Aside from all these things, until we see definitively that we have a content where DOT can see that play, I'm just gonna be more conservative and focusing a little bit more highlights into your future DPSs, your future supports, and all the future team comps. Because DOT, like whether you like it or not, right? Even if you like DOT or hate DOT, you can't really deny the fact that they are always a side grade. They are like the middle child, right? Or even like the 4th child or the 5th child, right? The child that doesn't really get that much attention, because I feel like HSR, they always like to push out a brand new big hoo-ha of an archetype for each version, right? For each version, which means if DOT will never ever be the mainstay focus as a team comp, it means that there are less incentives for your endgame content to cater towards DOT, unless there's a DOT banner, which is what's happening right now, right? So manage your expectations a little bit more and just come to a little bit more of a realism on knowing what you're pulling for, right? Not just for the current endgame, because the endgame goes away in 6 weeks, but for future endgame as well. And if you were committed to DOT because the current performance now is very, very strong, then don't be so short like Pikachu shot, right? When the performance are no longer strong again, when all of these shield environments go away, right? So that is pretty much my final thoughts for Hysilens. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Word of the day is gonna be MrPokke. Join Twitch, join YouTube, join Discord, join the all the best. Well, guys, I use hope for you 10% of gamers. I'll join our page for all of our images. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.